Hello and welcome to The Direct Approach with Wayne Moorhead, an exclusive podcast by DSN filled with candid and insightful conversations with leading corporate executives about today's evolving direct sales channel. On this episode, Wayne interviews Eric Reisdorf, President and General Manager of Ambit Energy, the #1 energy company in the direct selling channel. Eric shares their approach to building trust, enhancing customer loyalty, and igniting the potential of their consultants through setting realistic income expectations. With more than 20 years of experience across a variety of roles within the retail energy industry, Eric leverages his prior roles in product development and pricing, financial planning, and customer lifecycle strategy to continue to drive consultant and revenue growth for the company. His dedication to building trust and fostering strong relationships with Ambit Energy's consultants, field leaders, and customers has been instrumental. With a firm understanding of the competitive and regulated market, Eric continues to drive innovation to position Ambit Energy for ongoing success. Now, please help me welcome your host, Wayne Moorhead, and today's guest, Eric Reisdorf, President and General Manager of Ambit Energy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of DSN's Direct Approach podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Moorhead, and I'm very excited about today's guest. He has more than 20 years experience in the retail energy industry, where he's leveraged his expertise in product development, pricing, financial planning, customer lifecycle management, and so much more. He's currently leading the #1 direct selling energy provider, super exciting. And I'm really glad to welcome Eric Reisdorf, President and General Manager of Ambit Energy. Eric, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Wayne. I'm very happy to be here.
We always start out by talking a little bit about people's origin story, just like any great superhero story. That's the starting point for all of them. And you have a really interesting entryway into the direct selling channel, a really interesting path. Do you mind just taking a few minutes and sharing how you ended up in direct selling energy and at Ambit?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, my history is all within deregulated retail energy. And around 2010, the current parent company of Ambit Energy decided to look into direct selling. What would that look like, and learn more about it? Because we were perceiving that was a growing segment within energy. So there was, Ambit and Stream and more than a handful, to be honest. So I actually headed up that project and did a very deep dive into what does this look like? Should we be participating in this? If we did, what would that look like? And we got as far as having a launch plan and having a compensation plan, and we were kind of ready to get into it. And then for a variety of reasons, we ended up putting pause on that. What was interesting that we learned along the way, though, was that of the companies that we studied in pretty good depth, Ambit Energy was definitely at the forefront of the group that we had looked at. And at that time, nobody was selling. Things were going really well. All these companies were growing. Well, then shortly after that, you had the polar vortex in the Northeast. That was a tough time for anybody who was competing there, including Ambit. And then a number of years after that, we had Storm Uri here in Texas, and that caused additional strain on a number of those companies. So these companies gradually started selling their books of customers, either just the book or the whole brand. And so then in 2019, Ambit became available, and from the work we had done and then additional work after that, we knew that it was a great company to add to the portfolio. So it was actually, interestingly enough, the announcement was made on my birthday, 2019, that we'd be picking up the Ambit brand. So at that time, it was initially being run by our president of retail brands and our chief marketing officer. And they kind of co-ran things for a couple of years and realized along the way that the consultant network is different from other channels, to the point that they need a central person to say, this person is really representing the Ambit brand. This is the person I can go to. This is the head of Ambit. So that's how I ended up in this role, and it's kind of a roundabout way, but it was, I knew a lot about the industry from all the work we had done more than a decade ago. And then when the position was created, I ended up being a good fit for it, and I've really enjoyed it.
That's a great story, Eric. Thank you so much for taking us through that path that led you into direct selling. I'm curious, besides the incredible numbers that the company had been putting up for several years, incredible growth rate, what was it about the direct selling channel as you did your analysis and your deep dive that you found most interesting and kind of tempting for the company to look at to get into that channel as well and add that into the portfolio?
The most interesting thing from the point of view of the company was really the fact that the channel and the network was complementary to everything else that the company already has in place. So they have, direct mail, door to door, television, all the traditional direct marketing channels, and this being person to person was a complementary, not a stack on of something else that the company already had.
So kind of almost more of like a diversification play a little bit. At least part of the incentive was kind of to diversify there.
Yeah. So diversification of all the different ways that the company gains new customers. And then also, of course, it was a healthy company. So a healthy number of customers, profitable group of customers, generally lower churn because, again, they're for the most part attached to somebody who's participating in the network.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that one of your initial priorities coming in and taking over was really quickly establishing trust with the field, with the consultants and the sales force there. I'm curious, how did you go about gaining their trust, establishing that strong relationship that you now have with the field, but also, I guess, as well with the internal corporate team as well?
That's a great question because, the Ambit book had been built. There was the founder, Jerry Thompson, and, they had been in place for a long, long time. So to have someone new come in that they had never heard of, and they knew that I was coming from the corporate side, I think the assumption from our standpoint was that they probably had a lot of questions about who I was and what I was going to be doing. So it was important, especially since this was 1 month before Ambition, our biggest event of the year. It was important for us to get together with some hand-picked leaders from the field. So my team chose that list of folks. We had about 20 people come in. They did introductions. I did an introduction. And then our president of retail and our chief marketing officer also made some comments as well, just to kind of reinforce with everybody, this is a good guy. Things will be okay. Get to know him, hear his story. So that got everything off to a good start. Obviously they had a lot of questions for me, and I was open with everything I could be. I said, I've got a lot of industry experience in retail energy. I have almost none in direct selling, other than the project that we talked about earlier. And then prior to that, and this was something that was amusing to everybody, I actually did participate in the Juice Plus network when I was in my 20s. And I did learn how to build, a customer base. I had about 20 customers under me, but my upline gave me no direction in terms of actually building a team. So I didn't have any depth. So once the customers started gradually attriting, that went by the wayside. But it was my first foray into direct selling. So it was basically staying in touch with that group of people, making sure that they understood that I was on their side, that I was going to do, my team and I, we were going to do everything we could to address challenges that they were facing, anything that was in the way of their success. And then that led into Ambition, where I was more formally announced to a much broader group of people. And then from then on, there were events out in the field that I went to. So, Chicago, Boston, different places in Texas, just flying around and making sure I introduced myself every chance I got. And then after doing that, at the end of these business presentations, I would hang around for another hour or two and, make sure I talked to people, answer questions they had. They could learn more about me. I learned more about them. So that was all part of that process.
That's great. It is always interesting when new leadership comes in. I've watched the field. They're always initially cautious. But then when they know that you do have their best interests at heart, that you're there to support the field, then they really embrace you with both arms and probably end up calling you more than you would have initially wanted. But I do think that speaks volumes that you initially wanted to focus on gaining their trust instead of just kind of coming in and taking this shotgun approach of saying, this is how we're going to run it. Because you you had done that deep dive. You did have really great context as to what was working, what you felt like could be optimized a little bit more. But the fact that you sat there and listened, and it's a very active process. I know when we think of listen, it sounds passive at times, but it really is this active process of getting up to speed, especially when it comes to gaining that trust of the field.
Absolutely. Every once in a while, I go back to all the notes I took from back then. And it's just so interesting to see these pages and pages of handwritten notes from that several months where I was really getting up to speed quickly and just reading all of the things that people were telling me and the ideas that they had and ideas that we had in response. And it's neat to see all that. Like you said, not a passive process at all.
No, and I'm sure that it went a long ways into informing your strategy and where you wanted to take the company as well. And kind of to that point, you really took the helm of a company that really had put up incredible numbers, had experienced incredible growth over several years. But you're also operating in a really competitive, a highly regulated environment, even one, as you mentioned, a couple of those just, environmental, weather issues that had a huge impact on the industry there. I'm curious how, as you approach developing your go-forward strategy, how did you balance kind of honoring that legacy, the history, the assets and programs that were in place, while also simultaneously needing to ensure that the company was well positioned in this kind of ever-changing industry and environment?
Yeah, the biggest part of that was all the conversations I had with my own internal team. I'm fortunate from the standpoint of the fact that that team, the vast majority of that team has been in place for more than 10 years. So they were there for all the good times. They were there for some of the more challenging times, and they were able to pretty well relay to me, these are the things that have stood the test of time that we need to make sure that we continue to reinforce and continue to teach. And then these are the other aspects where, changes in the marketplace, changes in direct selling are going to cause us to have to rethink how we do things, how we compensate the network, and then our strategy for the plans and prices and products that we have available for sale. So that was really the approach, was just making sure that I had a good foundation for what was still working from the days that you mentioned, where it was really the astronomical growth and building from there.
I love that you really leveraged the internal team. And I think back to trust, I think that probably went a long way as well in establishing trust with them, is knowing that you were open, you were listening, you were contextualizing, and really that you put a value on what they think and all of the work that had been done before. I think we've probably all been in the reverse experience of that, being in a company where somebody comes in and isn't listening and kind of already has their idea made up about where they want to take the company. And my experience is it always goes a lot better when you really build on a solid foundation and leverage the expertise and experience of the team there. So again, I think that speaks volumes as well. So I'm curious, thinking back to, your first several months in, how is selling and operating in the direct selling channel different than you initially thought it would be?
One of the biggest differences, and this is something that I think may not always stay this way, but, in direct selling on the product side, typically you're selling somebody a product and you get them liking it more. And then you also start talking about the opportunity after you've got someone who is familiar with the product, they enjoy the product, and then you get them to start thinking about selling the product or talking about the product. On the services side, one thing probably the main thing that I found out early on was that you typically lead with the opportunity. And you get someone interested in the opportunity, and then once they become a consultant, then you teach them how to gather some customers. And the reason I say that might change is partly because of changes in the industry, but also changes that we've made to our compensation plan, where there was almost a chicken and egg phenomenon before, where I think people did that because that was how the compensation plan was geared. Like, you came in, you signed up, when you got a handful of customers, you got a bonus for doing that. and you got additional bonuses for repeating that process, but didn't explicitly get anything after that for bringing in additional customers. So now with the new compensation plan that we just announced at Ambition, you can actually come in, trigger your bonus for that initial process, and then get additional money for gathering customers. So there's really two paths now. You can build, you can still make money that way, but you can also say, well, that's not me. I'm not comfortable doing that, or not comfortable doing that yet, but I am good at going and gathering customers, and I can keep getting paid for every customer I bring in. And all the customers under me, I'm also getting monthly recurring income off of those as well. So I think that was the biggest eye-opening that didn't even come up in the research I had done, more than a decade ago, was the whole kind of flip-flop of you bring in consultants and then customers versus on the product side, it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's interesting that you picked up on that, especially kind of right away. I think that historically, that's how a lot of the channel, even the more consumable products, kind of led with the opportunity. And that's one of the significant shifts that all of us have been experiencing, is this kind of shift now to more of the product than the opportunity, where we kind of sequence these events that are found at these milestones along the journey differently, kind of taking them from consumer to consultant. And I was going to kind of mention this later, but because I think we're on the topic, one of the things that I am really impressed by and really hit me hard as I kind of was preparing for this interview. And again, I've been around Ambit and the team. I've been at events and read articles and had a pretty decent understanding. But one of the things that really impacts me is how the company positions the opportunity, where so many of us, I think, historically have focused on and really marketed the benefits, the income potential of the higher consultant ranks, those that are, call it the extreme success cases, those at the very top. And I feel like Ambit's taking the exact opposite approach. Going to the website, watching a lot of the videos, you're very intentional on saying, do you want to earn a little extra income? Not just do you want to earn income? Do you want residual? But it's a little extra income, which I think goes a long way in helping to set expectations, and probably is a more successful entry point, I would gather, for a potential consultant. Can you talk a little bit about why you are taking kind of that tact in kind of setting those expectations early?
Yeah, a big part of it is one of the 4 pillars of the parent company of Ambit, but I think Ambit's fully on board with it, is we do business the right way. And I'm not saying that advertising a $10,000 a month income is the wrong way, but it's a very unlikely outcome. And I think most people know that. And so what we want to pitch is, look, come to this business presentation. Here's an opportunity, particularly with the new compensation plan, where you can multiply your initial investment in the first month or two. And then from then on, you can make some additional income by gathering a handful of additional customers. And all of a sudden, you as a new consultant have not done anything crazy. You've done some very reasonable things, and you've made somewhere between $500 and $1,000. And it's our belief that someone who has gotten to that point is much better positioned to go out and be able to tell that to other people, versus someone who came in thinking, well, I've got a long path, but I'm going to get to $10,000 a month, and I'm going to tell all sorts of people about it along the way. Because I think what that person's going to run into is, in the back of their mind, they're going to start feeling like they're failing. And I think that's going to, whether they think they're hiding it or not, that's going to come across as they are doing their prospecting, especially if they get asked the direct question, well, how are you doing so far? And then they're like, well, not very well, but I'm going to, don't worry. So that's really our philosophy, is give someone some early successes to build on and to talk about, and, be more real. Like that is more real. Like I could come and prospect to you and explain that to you. You could show up, we could get you signed up, get some customers. Again, you're somewhere between $500 and $1,000. That's worth talking about. That's worth sharing. There's more beyond that, but that at least gives you something where you feel like, okay, this company is legitimate. what they told me would happen did happen because I did the things that we talked about doing. So now the rest of my path seems much more attainable because I've already had some success.
I love that approach. And I think it's super powerful that the company's doing this. I think there's a lot in there that we as a channel can learn. And it gets back to that idea that you mentioned earlier about establishing trust, getting those quick wins early, having people earn that income. Then they have that belief in place to then not only advance themselves, but as you mentioned, kind of go out and recruit with confidence. And I'm sure that trust in those wins also has a pretty big impact on customer retention, which I know is a really big focus for you and the company there. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing as a company to really improve retention, and also the why, like why that's such an important focus and how it impacts upstream?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest benefits of the acquisition of Ambit is that Ambit got surrounded by some really exceptional teams within the industry in terms of customer service and customer retention and customer operations. Those teams do excellent work for a number of brands within Texas, all within the same family, of course. And they've kind of got the secret sauce in terms of how do you retain customers through the management of pricing, communications, and even win-back campaigns. So we have campaigns running where if a customer, let's say you've got a personal customer that leaves you sometimes without you even noticing, we will reach out to that customer, win that customer back, and put that customer right back in your organization so you don't miss a beat in terms of your monthly income. The reason that we think that is so important is because if you aren't feeling like you have to worry about losing a lot of the customers that you're bringing in, like you've got a leaky bucket, you can be facing forward, looking at where am I going to get my next consultant? Where am I going to get my next customer? And wholly focused on that while we're taking care of the customers in the back end, making sure that you're not losing them out the back end. So basically the way I like to say it is you're driving, looking through the windshield, not through the rearview mirror. That's a much better way to get your car down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've even built it into part of the compensation structure. Can you talk a little bit about how you help kind of incentivize customer retention through compensation?
Yeah, so it's you get paid for every customer you bring in one way or another, but also you get monthly recurring income after that based on the customer usage. So it's, if you bring in a customer that is going to be around for years, that's years of additional income for you. So it's a great thing that we can say these are the plans that customers can get on that are tied to the longest customer life. And at the same time, we're doing everything we can to also help keep those customers in your book, because that book, again, it's your ongoing monthly income after all the work you've done to bring those customers in the first place.
DSN is honored to be supported by industry suppliers that partner with companies across the channel to help enhance, streamline, and grow your businesses. This episode is sponsored by PayQuicker. Your business moves fast, but is your money keeping up? PayQuicker's award-winning solution lets your business make payouts across the globe instantly. Send payments to over 200 countries and territories in more than 40 currencies through PayQuicker's secure API with funds available to spend immediately. PayQuicker is a fully customizable, white-label payment platform, letting you offer branded debit cards, instant virtual cards, global bank transfers, mobile wallets, cash, and more. Plus, you get their bank-grade security and global compliance coupled with multilingual account support so you can focus on growing your business. Start paying your sales force instantly with the largest global payout provider to direct selling organizations, because faster payouts to your distributors means they grow their business and yours faster. Learn today at payquicker.com. This episode is also sponsored by the CP and Krell Group. Did you know that the average cost of one bad hire is nearly $15,000? By bringing 25 years of executive level experience with direct selling and speaking 5 languages, The CP and Krell Group knows what it looks like to have a success in a diverse and international environment. Specializing in the beauty, wellness, and fashion industries, their omni-channel approach allows them to have access to a pool of candidates with experience in various channels beyond direct sales. The CP and Krell team leverages invaluable insight into what it takes to recruit top talent. And by promoting diversity, 92% of their candidates hired in the last 18 months had an ethnically diverse background, with 85% speaking at least 2 languages. Because landing a more sophisticated brand of talent takes a more sophisticated recruiting strategy, the CP and Krell Group is your ideal partner to attract the industry's most substantial talent. Visit cpkrell.com, that is CPKRELL.com, to learn more. The talent of tomorrow discovered today. Now let's get back to the interview.
You've talked about the importance of product and price, and I read something that you said that I think is really powerful, and I've continued to reflect on the last several days in anticipation of our conversation. You've talked about the importance of kind of those fundamental building blocks. Again, the product has to be great, has to be priced competitively. The price value equation needs to be there. The compensation needs to reward the right behavior. And of course, the consultant has to work hard. You know, they have to put in a certain amount of effort to attain a certain level of results. But you said if after all those things, if the consultant is not getting the compensation that they were promised, that's really the responsibility of corporate to address and fix. Again, I think there's so much in there, but I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit and why you think that's so important.
Sure. And I think there's 2 important parts to that. One part is on the product side. So the product pricing combination, that is what consultants nowadays have to understand more than ever before. So that has become much more complicated, but it's also why we invest really a whole day. So at Ambition, we invest one whole day into training the consultants on products and pricing and how to position all of that. Because they've got to be able to go out there, and if they make their list of 10 or 20 people to start with. When they talk to those 10 or 20 people, they've got to have some success. So to your point, we have to have great products, and the pricing has to be reasonable. We don't compete on price all by itself, because there are very few companies that actually win solely on price. And if we're competing only on price, we're going to have a hard time paying the consultants what I want to be able to pay them. So there's a balance there too as well. So that's really the customer side of it, is you've got to have an attractive, again, product price combination out there. So we've got a variety of different products, many of which are not copied elsewhere in the marketplace. So you can, when you're talking to someone, you can say, look, this is a unique product that you can only get from Ambit through me. Let's talk about this. Then the consultant side of it is, like you said, this formula has to work, especially if new consultants are doing the right things. It's one thing if a consultant comes in and they don't take the actions. Well, of course, you're not going to make the income. That makes sense. But if you come in and you do the right things and you're not getting your customers, again, that's the product price side. But then if you get your customers in and you can't get additional consultants, that's the compensation plan. Something's going on with the compensation plan. So it's important for us as corporate to keep our eye on what is the flow of all of these metrics of incoming customers, incoming consultants, how long are consultants staying, and then using that to adjust what we are giving them in their toolbox.
I think that speaks, again, to kind of this theme emerging here around trust, that as the company, lays out these promises, if they're not attainable, you're not going to have trust long-term. You're not going to have customers long-term. Your attrition rate is going to be much higher than normal. But if you do deliver from a product, from a price, from a compensation standpoint to the multiple audiences there, then there's enormous opportunity to have great growth and great stability simultaneously. And I think that's really powerful that you put the onus back on the company and, not just kind of pass the buck and say, well, the consultants aren't working as hard as they really should. But if they are,
right,
if they're putting in the requisite amount of effort, they should be getting, the promised compensation to go along with that. You also talked about, which I totally agree with, of course, price and product, kind of that value equation can't compete on price. You'd just be a race to the bottom there. But I'm curious about how you look at differentiation and positioning within this kind of highly competitive, highly regulated services industry. How do you make sure that Ambit becomes the preferred brand and can stand out from the competition, where some people, at initial glance might not be able to see the differentiation immediately? So how do you make sure that differentiation comes through loud and clear?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to build differentiation, and we've built the differentiation in the variety of plans that we sell. Electricity plans. We sell gas plans as well, but it's primarily electricity plans. And to your point on the regulation, we have more flexibility in Texas than we have outside of Texas, although that is slowly changing. So we have some plans outside of Texas that are more than a price point. In Texas, there's more you can do with the structure of the plans. So a typical customer in Texas, their August and September and even July bills can be 3 to 4 times as high as what your October and March bill might be. And for someone who likes to run, a pretty tight budget, that can be pretty hard to manage. So, some of our plans do a lot to help smooth that out, where, yeah, your usage is much higher in those summer months, but we're taking that and smoothing it out, recapturing some of that in the off-peak months where your bill would be much lower than that if it weren't for otherwise the structure of this product. And then there are other plans that give you additional savings off of products that you already buy. So you get monthly up to $50 toward different restaurants that you go to, different places that you shop. And then there's other plans and this is one that we did just because everybody in Texas already does it, but it's a free nights plan. So if you want to really crank your air conditioning at night and not have to worry about what it's going to cost, we have that plan as well. Because there is this variety, as I alluded to before, it's very important that, unlike when Ambit was really in its initial heyday of the very fast growth, when they were selling purely on price, it's important that our consultants really understand these plans. Like, what are these plans? Who are they for? What are the differences? What are the plan names? Because all the plans have names, just like with your cell phone. When regardless of who you're with, these different cell phone plans all have names, and our plans all have names as well. It's critical that they understand them and that they're pitching them to the right people. To that point, we know that it can be daunting to have 10 different plans available, and you're not necessarily a salesperson. You're just trying to you're trying to get in on this opportunity. We advertise as well that if you sign up through a consultant and you realize that you got onto a plan that isn't ideal for you, call us up and we'll take care of that. We have the experts, and we'll understand your situation and get you on a better plan. And all of this without any detriment at all to the consultant. So the consultant gets to keep their customer, the customer is on a better plan, everybody's happy.
I think that's so smart that you realized kind of that friction point and quickly removed it for the consumer and the consultant. Again, I think that goes a long way. And I love how thoughtful and intentional you were in building out the product offering and the portfolio, ensuring that differentiation is really built in there, because again, that's what's going to make the consultant's job so much easier, is having a differentiated product to sell, because that's always going to win, I think, over the long term for sure. So I know that one of the initiatives that have been really important to you is establishing this great culture of innovation, not only as it relates to product, but also the technology and tools for the consultant. Can you talk a little bit about some of what the company's doing on that technology front to help kind of enable and empower the consultants to do their job?
Yeah, absolutely. So, nowadays more than ever, people are spending a tremendous amount of time on their phones and less time on what you might consider a true PC or a laptop. So we've had to move everything that they do, whether it's managing their business or prospecting or even their own customers' My Account, all over to a very good mobile experience. So if you are on your phone as a consultant, you can really do anything that you used to be able to do on your laptop. In fact, it's almost even easier. If you want to share business opportunity videos with people directly and then see, okay, who came in and what did they do with it? Or if you want to share to other social spots, you can do that all from that app. Then once you get your business built, you can see how your business is going, both all your weekly money that's coming in addition to your monthly recurring income. And then brand new, just announced at Ambition, we have built our own customer app. So all of your customers can go in and they can see their monthly usage, they can pay their bill, they can look at bill history, and it's all, again, just a couple clicks away on your phone.
I love that you've moved from that kind of mobile first to mobile only. I know that's about the only way I operate now. I haven't opened a laptop, I think, in about 3 years. So it's just phone and an iPad for me. But
Right.
Absolutely, this is how we're living our lives. It's how the distributors are conducting our business. And I'm glad that you put that as an emphasis. And I think that's a lesson for so many of us in the industry, is make sure that it's not just, hey, we've considered mobile. Yes, we have a responsive site, but that it actually is leading, and that allows that we're enabled to really do all of our transactions and all of our business via the mobile, for sure. I want to shift into getting a sense more on kind of how you personally see some philosophies, some approaches, and some things as it relates to the industry. So I'm curious, now that you've been in the channel for a while, what are some of the changes you're seeing, or what direction do you see the channel going over the next 3 to 5 years? I'm curious, just as someone that obviously really analyzed the channel and the opportunity here, but now also has that firsthand experience. You kind of have that fresh eyes combined with expert now. So I'm curious what you're seeing.
It feels to me like a smaller percentage of new consultants are actually going to ultimately build a very, very deep organization. I think that's, and again, there's some chicken and egg going on here as well, just because I think compensation plans nowadays want to get more money into new consultants' hands sooner. So in order to be able to afford to do that, you can't put all the big money at the end of the rainbow, like the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's kind of no money in the first, call it 7 levels, and then all the money is after that. So I think, again, chicken and egg, it's hard to tell which one's leading it, but I think the trend is toward getting more money up in those earlier levels of the compensation plan, and also into the hands of newer consultants, again, so they can experience that early success and tell others about that. I also think that because of social and because of other advancements in terms of how people are networking with others beyond just the face-to-face interactions, that more and more companies are realizing that the number of customers, whether it's a customer buying a product or a service, the number of customers per consultant is likely going to continue to rise, because rather than hanging around with 10 friends that you see in person regularly, you've got 1,000 friends on Facebook or Instagram that you have some amount of influence over.
I'm definitely seeing a lot of the same. I think we're feeling some of that. And some of it even has come through in some of the generational research that I know Heather Chastain has done that's available. It's incredible to me that I feel like the distributors coming in today are more open to sharing products than maybe any generation before. It's pervasive throughout their life and their social experience. But it seems like fewer are wanting to really build out a deep sales organization. They don't want to manage an entire sales organization. They just want to share products with friends, families, and followers. And I think that speaks to the need for us in the channel to get really good at kind of segmentation and understanding different audiences, different needs, and developing these kind of tailored, bespoke journeys, I think, for each of them. I'm seeing some of those same changes as well. So I'm glad that you're experiencing that and have been able to highlight that. So I know that you have a couple kind of core personal philosophies, one being the importance of being yourself or being authentic. And the other is combining that with the importance of being brave and bold. Can you talk about how you view kind of each of those two philosophies and approaches to life and business?
Yeah, for me, being authentic is so important. One, as I mentioned, I have a very seasoned team. They've been around a long time. They know what they're doing in this industry. So if I were to come in and try to act like I know it all, they would sniff that out immediately. And if I'm trying to put on a facade of someone that I'm not really behind that, then I'm putting energy into that I could otherwise be putting into skills and competencies and experiences that are really more complementary to the rest of my team. So I think that was really important for me to be upfront about this is what I know, this is what I'm good at, this is what I don't know, and what I'm really going to be dependent on all of you to help again be complementary with what I have so that together we can reach a higher level of success. At the same point, the Be Bold was really a shared message this year at Ambition. And it was really about we were being bold by overhauling our compensation plan, which hadn't been touched since 2012. And that's a bold move. Like it's especially since it's not one of those things that you can kind of gradually test and pull it back. It's like you put it out there, it's out there, it's the new plan. So we were being bold from that standpoint, and the way that we announced it and all the different reinforcement that we brought in throughout the rest of Ambition to reinforce the compensation plan was encouraging, was flipping it back over to the consultant group to say, look, this is out here now. You have the opportunity to get a lot more success for new consultants. Go get those new consultants. You can also continue earning money on new customers, continue going to get new customers, because now you're going to get paid for every single one. So they were bold moves on our part. It's definitely going to cost us more, but it's an investment in that consultant group that I truly do care about. And we're putting more money out there. That's our bold move. And we're telling them, take what's being put out there. That's your opportunity. And you go be bold with that. And let's see what happens.
I love that. I think it's amazing and really powerful to be able to balance kind of both those attributes simultaneously. And it reminded me of a quote I read. It's probably cliche and everybody knows it, by a famous business leader. But they were talking about their experience going into head up a division in a product category they didn't have experience in. And they were asked, well, what do you know about this category? And they had mentioned that, their job isn't to have all the answers. Their job is to have the questions. And that's really helped inform, I think, my leadership style a lot. And it sounds like a very similar approach to you. Is I think not coming in saying I have all the answers gives you permission to really take a hard look at what the company is doing, to bring in all the inputs, and then end up with a better go forward strategy and ultimately a better result, which I think is a great attribute of your leadership style. And I want to end with two questions. One kind of looking back and maybe one looking forward. I know that you grew up learning about business from a family-owned and family-run business. I'm curious, as you look back, what are some of the most important lessons you learned from operating in that family business at such a young age?
Yeah, there were two main things. One is that, and it really was the whole family. It was my grandparents who started it, and then their children, and then their children, and now even my sister's children are in the business as well. So it's on its fourth generation now. Everybody always worked hard and didn't really care about what they were doing in terms of, well, what would someone think if they knew that the owner of the company was going and getting carts out of the parking lot and bringing them back in. People just did whatever needed to be done, especially during the busiest times of the year. More importantly than that, though, and I think this is really why that business has stood the test of time, is that my grandparents said from the very beginning, and the rest of my family still says it now, is you have to treat the customer right. That is number one. And that's at the core of every decision we make, and everything that you do is treat the customer right. So that has stuck with me. And I've kind of expanded now in this role to treat the customer right and treat the consultant right.
I love that you had those opportunities young and that they've continued to really impact and inform your leadership. So finally, as you look out over the next 3 to 5 years, what's next for Ambit? What do you want to accomplish and where do you want to help take Ambit?
So because of what we sell, retail energy, so electricity and gas, we have been for a long time locked into, a certain number of states. So Texas being the main one, but also some of the Midwest and some of the Northeast. And once the deregulation momentum stopped, that kind of became a static list of states. And there aren't really any new states that are about to deregulate and become another area for us where we can sell those same products. So I really want to, again, without going overboard on it and selling 8 different things, I really want to find a handful of additional things that Ambit could add that would expand us into new states. So we announced, our first step in that direction, we announced at Ambition that we are going into community solar. And the interesting thing about community solar, beyond the fact that someone who wants solar but doesn't want to put panels on the roof can now have that, that product is available and starting to become available in more states beyond the current footprint in which we compete. So we're going to kind of gate our way into it. It's not just a nationwide thing immediately. We're starting with 4 states, but we're going to continue to add states. And again, that's an exciting thing for the consultants and for us because it gets us beyond this footprint that has been static for a long time. And I think there's other products out there like that are complementary to energy. Like you won't find, an Ambit energy drink out there anytime soon, or, a hair care product, but things that are complementary to what we already sell. I'm going to keep looking at those things and trying to figure out how can we get those into our portfolio for the benefit of our network.
I love that innovation and expansion are front of mind, how you can continue to help and impact the customers and consultants. Eric, I want to thank you so much for your time today. We're so glad that you're in the channel leading such an incredible company. Please give our best to everybody back there at the home office. We look forward to seeing you in a few weeks at DSU and just wish you the best of luck as you continue with Ambit Energy.
Okay, sounds great, Wayne. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for tuning in. Please take a minute to give a 5-star rating and review to help Direct Approach continue to provide candid interviews and insights for direct selling corporate executives. Thank you for listening and supporting DSN and the Direct Approach podcast.